you're muted. I'm not hearing you. Is she muted?
Good morning. Good morning.
Ah, yes. There you are.
Morning, Kadijah.
I am here. Let me just raise my volume here.
You raise your volume, man. You go
Right.
ahead.
I hear you know you're good now.
Good morning. We get lipstick this morning, girl.
But of course, it had to match me the red, white, and black on my UNC jersey.
Yeah, we get lipstick this morning. Wow, what a thing.
We appreciate you being here because I know that you've been campaigning hard and coming in the wee hours in the morning and stuff like that. So I know it's not easy getting up because you're going to go again after the all the way down. So thank you for being here.
Well, in fact, this last week we have some late nights and early mornings. So I've given that commitment to see it through. And so even when I don't get much sleep, when you hit the campaign trail, you get energy, eh? Yeah.
But you're accustomed walking because from my knowledge of you, you don't ever stop walking your constituency anyway. So
you don't ever stop, period.
I started during COVID because, we couldn't keep meetings and people wouldn't come into the office. So I started something called MP home visits, where I would literally walk from house to house and talk to people at their gates, hear their concerns and their complaints. And people talk differently to you one-on-one as opposed to in a meeting. So I have walked the entire St. Augustine constituency at least once in each area to visit some places more than once. And that is outside of the areas that had problems, such as the flooding and so on, where we were constantly for several weeks. So my condition is good in terms of walking. But when you are out there as well, you're also exposed to the elements. You may be sweating, and then a shower of rain come down and you get wet. You might be exposed to a lot of dust. You have Sahara dust. So you really have to pay attention to your nutrition and vitamins and your own personal condition, your physical condition. Yeah.
Well, I know you do your home visits. You have sent pictures outside my parents' home for me when you went there.
Yeah, well, once I visit and I reach by Miss Betty's house, I must send a selfie for Steve.
Yes.
But I've come to know so many of my constituents one-on-one, a personal level, know their parents, their children, so after
how was the campaign been going?
Let me just jump in, guys. Let me just say good morning, MP Ameen. Morning.
Good morning, Wendell.
I have to run away though, but I couldn't run
We're
away.
going on campaign this early morning.
No. I have to take in my vehicle, unfortunately. I always do things on a Tuesday because I normally am not on radio on a Tuesday. So I always set up my appointments on Tuesday. But I made the exception today because I wanted to say hello and also to at least, how I should put it, give advice to you because you're the expert in local government and that entire UNC government party.
I am one of the persons. We have several MPs who served as councillors who are very knowledgeable on local government.
Yeah, but you served long, you served well, you served hard, you are chairman of a corporation. Yes. Why aren't you taking the lead? Because the UNC's campaign has not really about being local government. And I'm saying, why aren't they using someone who has the knowledge about local government, who would have been through the rigors of local government, who can expose a vision for local government? Why aren't they using you?
Has Dr. Rowley allowed anybody in the PNM to lead his campaign? The political leader of the parties lead the campaigns. Even on the PNM platform, Dr. Rowley is the main speaker, the featured speaker.
But Dr.
Faris Alwari, who is the sitting minister of local government, doesn't have any experience in local government as a practitioner, even as yourself.
But he does, yeah.
He has never been a local government representative.
Faris Alwari served as an alderman in Port of Spain,
Really? He doesn't show the experience in local government though. But in any case, you have more experience than he does. But my point is that the political leaders generally take the lead on any campaign, any election campaign, and it is the same in the PNM where Dr. Rowley is leading the campaign
But Mr. Amin, Dr. Rowley is talking local government. Look at what your leader is talking. Light it up, cock it back. Knock it.
That is not the only thing she has spoken about. That is not the only thing. She has also spoken extensively. And let me tell you, Kamala Persad-Bissessar has not been speaking about local government only on the election trail. Long before the election date was even named or postponed, she has been talking about the disparity in funding in local government, the need for equity, the need for other government agencies to deliver through local government bodies, whether they are PNM or UNC led, so that you will have more cohesion, the need for more municipal police, the need for the allocations that are in fact given to be released on time. She has been talking about those things. So we don't only talk local government.
So what changed? Why has she changed?
And she continues to talk now. The clips you may hear and the snippets you will see on TikTok doesn't reflect the entire speech. But every time she speaks, we do post her entire contribution online. And sometimes the contribution might be about 45 minutes to an hour sometimes. So quite a few topics are covered. But it is not only local government and the administration of local government that is covered. But you must tie in the issues of the day to the campaign that is before us. And if we have to talk about the biggest issue being crime, how can local government provide a solution for crime? We have been talking about municipal police being involved in community patrols, being involved in patrolling at schools to reduce school violence, but also to protect schools. We had children hiding under desks when there was a shootout outside their school. How do we get local government bodies involved to deal with the issues that affect people the most, including crime, including people's inability to feed their children? How do we, a campaign must be relevant to the people.
I'm hearing that. So are you in support of the way the way Mrs. Persad-Bissessar is bringing over the issue of crime and the proposal to arm more people in this country? Are you in support of that?
I am in support of this Stand Your Ground. Stand Your Ground is not only give out guns like if it's sweetie. Stand Your Ground is where you make a decision to defend your home, because many people feel so helpless. They are in a situation and they feel they can't do anything. If you install burglar proof and you install cameras, that is standing your ground because you are defending your home as well. But it also includes allowing citizens who qualify, who meet the requirements, to be able to own a gun and get a firearm user license. So that you will have legal guns, because these criminals have access to a lot of illegal guns and citizens are sitting ducks. So it is to level the playing field, and it is not only about giving guns, it is about standing.
That's not a playing field, Miss Ameen. That's a killing field.
Well, you see, if I say killing field, you will find it is a dread term, but I'm glad you said it, because that is what Trinidad and Tobago has become under this government.
And that is what, and my fear is that it's going to get worse when you propose that you arm people and you fight fire with fire, you light them up, you knock it so, and you to me, that is sending a message.
While I hear criticism of Mrs. Persad-Bissessar's proposal, what I'm not hearing is a solution from the PNM. Or I'm hearing them condemning her, saying stand your ground. I am not seeing more police on the ground. I am a representative who is on the ground. We have areas where bandits are patrolling in groups of 6 and 8. We have areas where there are people jumping your fence and stealing from your garden hose to your car. And we have, every area we have asked for increased patrols. But does the police have the ability to meet those demands? They do not. I am not hearing a solution from the government. So what I want the government to do, instead of criticizing Mrs. Persad-Bissessar by just condemning, let's hear your alternative. Let's hear how you're going to protect. In light of the government being there for the past 8 years and having failed to reduce the murder rate.
I have to run now, but I want to run with this last thing I want to tell you, right? You see, the difference between me and a few other PNM people and most people in the UNC is that we are not afraid to tell our political leader or all our other ministers that they do stupidness and they're wrong. UNC,
have you ever told Fitzgerald Hines doing stupidness?
Yeah,
that man continues to be the minister.
Miss Ameen, listen, hear me out. I am not afraid to criticize my leader, especially on radio, and my colleagues can bear me out. But somehow or the other, the UNC people are afraid. They don't ever tell Kamala Prasad, ma'am, you're wrong. You should
Well,
never
how you
say
know that? How you are not in a position to speak to that because you are not within the party and you don't know the discussions and the level of consultation.
You have never done it publicly.
You don't. You would not know that. You would not know that. In fact, there are many people who disagree with the UNC publicly. In fact, I find it's too many. There are people who all over the place disagreeing with the UNC and condemning the leader. That is not something new in the UNC. But what I have not seen is I am wondering, does anybody tell Fitzgerald Hines, tell Rowley to move Fitzgerald Hines that he's failing?
Dr. Rowley.
Has anybody in the PNM been brave enough to tell Dr. Rowley, move Fitzgerald Hines as the Minister of National Security because he's an embarrassment to the country and he's endangering people's lives?
So you see, you're going down the same road as your leader now. You're making this election about personalities. This is a local government election.
This is, if we are going to talk local elections, we're talking relevant issues with crime and security has to be an issue. The Minister of National Security has to be an issue. After 8 years where the PNM has not gotten crime under control, Fitzgerald Hines is an abject failure. You yourself know this. And you are asking about us in the UNC, do we share
Ameen, there is no Minister of National Security who will ever be deemed a successful minister. That has been happening from time immemorial.
It is not about
every single Minister of National Security. Under the People's Partnership, you all changed 5 because you recognize that it's a hard job.
And we also reduced murders.
Well, that's debatable.
It is not the TTPS figures. Listen, it's not by a few. The TTPS figures is not UNC say so. It's not UNC numbers. The TTPS figures are the facts. That is the truth. And you can look at the track record of the UNC and look at the track record of...
But Gary Griffith said the lowest murder rate was under him and he served during the PNM reign.
I would like you to... I know you are a man of research. I know you are a man who likes facts. I would like you to look at the TTPS murder figures, violent crime, from 2000 come back. Look at 20 years.
You're saying Gary Griffith is wrong?
I am asking you to go and do the research because the fact is under the UNC, murders were far less than it is under the PNM, and it is a critical issue. It is an issue that is relevant to people, and there is a role for local government to play in making our communities safer. And so this campaign has to be about people and what people require at this time.
I hear you. But you stay working hard, my dear, because come post August 14th, the UNC going to be calling for the leader head again, so you stay working hard right there.
But you just tell me nobody in the UNC don't disagree with the leader.
You have my support.
We have no shortage of people.
After this curtail again here.
I listen, I'm not a woman that's talking. My hashtag is Ameen business. I'm not about talk.
I like it.
On the 14th, and the night of the 14th, I'm not even waiting for the 15th. You will see the results. You will
I'll call you.
You will get some surprises, Wendell. But you may not be surprised because as a person on the ground, you know that people are dissatisfied with the PNL.
All right. Bye-bye, Kadijah.
So we gave you some time to exchange as both people in local government. So, well, to be fair, both of you are experienced in local government, so the exchange was quite interesting. I appreciate the fact that you all are able to disagree respectfully. I always think that's very important. While
like family, don't get tired. She's like family.
Oh, well, you had your chance. Oh God, you had your chance. One put in your corner. We get a whole 20 minutes.
All right, let's get back into it.
Yeah. Kadijah, while I understand your perspective or your party's perspective on stand your ground, you explained it in terms of defending yourself. Do you agree with the statements which the Council for Ethical Political Behavior has said, be inside violence, while stand your ground in principle is about protecting your family and yourself? And to be, as I told Wendell last week, it has resonated with quite a significant portion of the society because of the crime situation. Is the language appropriate? Load up the matic, light them up, reload. Is the language productive?
Well, let me tell you, I could give you my opinion. My opinion will be biased. The question is whether, in terms of the views of the public, does this incite the public the Council for Ethical Behavior in terms of politics will deal with inciting violence against another political party or political opponent. This stand your ground legislation and the words
or people in general, it's not only politicians,
yes.
or people in general.
This stand your ground legislation targets criminals, not ordinary citizens. The ordinary citizen to stand up. It does not encourage anyone to irresponsibly use a weapon, to attack anyone, or it encourages you to defend your home and your.
What does load up your matic mean to you?
I think what happened is that the leader quoted a song. That load up, let me tell you, I know.
Yeah, but the leader is quoting the song in a public domain. What does load up the matic mean to you?
Light them up means light them up, Paul Richards.
What does load up the matic mean to you, Kadijah?
Load up the matic is a phrase. It is a phrase. It is not to be taken literally. You know, but of course, I mean, there are people who will use that as one thing to condemn. But the truth is that the stand your ground legislation in principle is about citizens defending your home when there is an attack from criminal elements. That is what it is.
And we understand that, and I said so. But when the leader of the opposition, a former prime minister, a person who is aspiring to be prime minister again, uses that phraseology, load up the matic, reload, light them up. Do you think it's responsible language?
Let me tell you, I think Kamla Prasad-Bissessar has resonated with a lot of citizens who may not really be UNC per se with this stand your ground legislation. There are some people who may attack the words, but the fact is that the position of defending your home has received widespread support from citizens, even citizens who do not wish to own a gun. They do wish to defend their home, and they wish to do so legally. So whether you want to pick apart her words, she has spoken on numerous platforms on numerous occasions and used different phrases. So whether you want to pick apart her words or not, the fact is that this principle of standing your ground, defending your home, is something that many citizens want. The question, of course, because this is a local government, the election is, how can local government play a role in meeting the concerns of the people at this time? So we have spoken about municipal police doing more patrols in communities, in schools, in the areas surrounding schools, to make children safer, playgrounds, because we had children being gunned down on playgrounds. You know, so how can local government play a role in making the communities safer, which is one of the key issues that people say when they meet you. The issues of local government in terms of the condition of the road, the neglect, you see the potholes. We have been seeing vehicles going down in potholes these days in Richmond Street in the middle of the capital city. You had a van stick and people had to try to prize them out and so on. Those are typical issues that fall under local government, but we have to be innovative. We have to think about national security and how local government can play a role. We have to think about the economy and how local economic development and the development of culture and sports can play a role in supporting communities and giving people and small and micro enterprises the opportunity to contribute to the economy. We have to be innovative. This is not just about road and box drain. The UNC was called the box drain government. We reduced flooding, thank you, but it is not only about flooding and box drains and paving roads. It is also about creating safer communities, about stimulating the economy and how local economic development must be part of the national agenda in addition to local government issues.
But local government and national government issues sometimes overlap and intertwine because we are a small space. So you can't help but have that kind of overlap from time to time. But I think for a lot of people, and I'm speaking broadly for a lot of Trinidadians and Tobagonians, even when you saw them being interviewed randomly on the street yesterday on one of the news channels about local government, there was a fairly high percentage that were disinterested in voting because they don't think that politicians meet and qualitatively meet and transform in a positive way their needs. A lot of the villages and towns across Trinidad and Tobago kind of look the same for decades.
Yeah.
there has not been any transformation either under the People's Partnership or the People's National Movement in any tangible way that people feel, okay, my quality of life has improved, my surroundings have improved. So people get a little jaded.
Yes, and this is why I say that local government is not just about roads and box drains and so on. It is not just about responding when there's a flood or preventing flooding. It must also be innovative. It must engage with families. It must engage with communities. But right now, local government barely have the resources to pick up the garbage, much less to do all those innovative things. And in fact, many people do not understand the role and the possibilities for local government, and so they would not have much interest. I'm sure if you interview those same people and ask them what is the role of local government, they may not be fully aware of the role. But even as we educate citizens in terms of what the role of regional corporations are, whether they know or not, the fact is we owe a duty to them to perform. And the government has failed to do that. I think the government has been talking local government only when there's an election around. You see 2016, you see 2019, and they're seeing now. And that is the only time they talk about local government. That is the only time they talk about local government reform. And they've been talking for local government reform for decades.
You are the shadow local government person in the UNC. This is a local government election, but in many people's estimation, it's really the launch of the 2025 campaign for the main political party. So let's say all political parties.
I feel so too. Yes, Paul, I feel so too.
So if you were to become a local government minister, what are the main sorts of reforms you would initiate to have the type of tangible change Richard referenced?
Well, first of all, there are systems presently now that do not work, that are supposed to work. So, for instance, what should be a run-of-the-mill administrative things such as the Minister of Finance in the budget allocates a X number of dollars to a regional corporation. First of all, that amount must increase. Secondly, those releases must be given on time. Releases for projects such as development projects, such as construction of bridges, roads, drains, and so on, should happen very early in the financial year to allow contracts to be awarded and for work to take place in the dry season. When the budget is read in September, and by October, November, you should have those releases and contracts being awarded, so that by January, when you have the dry season, construction can begin. You should not be having corporations make requests for funding and it's being delayed at the Ministry of Local Government or the Ministry of Finance. You're tired of hearing them talking about waiting on releases. This is something that I think is a key element in delivering on time. When I was a chairman of Tunapunur Piako Corporation, that was one of the things, and again, central government ties into local government, because we can make our requests early, but coordinating that in every corporation is the role of the minister. And the principle of central government taking an active role in local government is important in having a smooth governance. So I think one of the urgent things that has to happen is for adequate funding to be allocated and for the funds to be released in a timely manner, and for the projects to be managed along the way so that you will have delivery on time and on budget. People don't want taxpayers' money wasting. We already hardly have money in the country. So to me, the delivery of projects is one thing. You should not have a box drain under construction and hang up for months at a time when, and the inconvenience and so on. The other thing that I think is important in the recovery of the economy, we have faced COVID, we have faced the government closing down Petrotrain and all these other things that has affected our economy. Local economic development is important. How do we get small and micro enterprises to be able to give them that support?
What should be the role of the regional bodies in that endeavor?
The regional corporations at this time, what I see them doing is attacking illegal vending. And while I don't condone breaking the law, we have to be reasonable. So where you have organic vending areas, let's regulate them instead of sending the police to get rid of them. Where we have things that are organic to the area, such as the crab vendors at Caroni Roundabout, the doubles at Davy. You have food being sold at Eddie Hart in the area of Eddie Hart because you have so many recreation grounds. Once you have sporting and cultural activities, you will have small vendors coming forward. And you must provide the facilities, which would include public health, running water, garbage collection, and sanitation. And you must do it in an unregulated environment. Make sure people have their food badges and so on, right? So stimulating the economy through local economic development. Where you have local tourism, you also have opportunities for small and micro enterprises. So it may not be around food where we typically think of doubles and corn soup and so on, but it may be craft. It may be when you visit the mud volcano, you would want a souvenir to say, I was at the mud volcano, as you would get when you go to any international tourist site. So how do we get our craftsmen involved in a way that it will make sense to them, not just to display their craft, but to earn a living? And we have so many talented people. We also should have for local tourism in our tour guides. Our tour guides, while they fall under the Ministry of Local Government, have to be engaged in all these areas so that you or any citizen could say, you know what, today is Sunday, I want to take a drive and go down by Nolly's Tunnel. What are you going to do at Nolly's Tunnel? What are you going to do at the mud oven, the dirt oven place? What are you going to do when you visit there? You know, so anybody in Trinidad should be able to say, let me take a drive to one of those places because it is safe, because it is convenient, because the roads to get there are well lit and in good condition. And even now, you see how poor road conditions affect local tourism, how poor road conditions affect the economy, because you're not going to open a business in an area where people don't want to come because the road is so bad. You know, so all of these are ways that local government can support the economic recovery of the country. Having good road conditions means accessibility for goods and services to come in and for people to visit and for your area to be transformed. How do you get young people to decide to become an entrepreneur? There are people who take initiative and sell water on the highway. Illegal as it is, they're not selling drugs, they're not selling guns. They are trying to make an honest dollar. But how do we provide the environment for them to do that?
But you know, I think it's in part a national conversation. I think it all starts with planning.
Yes.
And it starts with planning on a very fundamental level. I do not know that villages and towns and cities across Trinidad and Tobago have comprehensive 5-year plans or 10-year plans, or let's say short-term, mid-term, and long-term plans about how this particular space is going to look.
Yes.
What are the plans? Because when you go to towns and villages abroad, obviously there is a plan in how that town or village looks. Yes. Even from the city center, obviously the planning, the vision is involved in the look of the city and town. Mm-hmm. Trinidad doesn't seem, on the face of it, to have that kind of intellectual focus on how do we plan our villages and towns. Yes. And because Cedros will have a particular plan as a seaside village, as does Icarcus. I talked to them. I went down to Icarcus and Cedros. Beautiful areas, lots of potential where you could stand up on the CNC Venezuela across, but the tourism or internal tourism happens despite the fact that the sign that says Icarcus and Cedros is blackened and is basically illegible. The roads need issues. You go onto the shoreline to watch it, you know, it's not managed, but still there is a certain amount of local tourism happening in spite of the obstacles that local government does not address. Yeah. And I think that's what frustrates Trinidadians and Tobagonians. We know Trinidad and Tobago has tourist possibilities, local tourism possibilities, is very beautiful in certain areas, But it seems like only the citizens know that, and not local government and national government on any level.
Yeah. You know, unfortunately, all of the issues you identified there, the signage falls under local government, road signs to tourist sites, the conditions of the roads, all of those things are local government responsibilities and regional corporations. Regional corporations are in a situation where sometimes they don't even have money to put diesel in their vehicles, to just do basic administrative things. So again, here it is a failure of the government, of central government, to provide the adequate funding, but also the policy directives to ensure that those things happen. So when people are at risk of losing their jobs because the government did not give sufficient funding to pay each employee till the end of the financial year, you understand that your concern now becomes saving a job rather than going out there and being, you know, productive and innovative and so on. So I do agree with that. Now, it is interesting that you mentioned the plans, because in 2010, in 2003, I became a councillor and I served until 2010 because they postponed the elections. During that time, Kyrie Consultants was hired by the government to do regional development plans for every corporation. And when the UN, that was completed in 2009 or 2010, somewhere close to the change in government. And Kamla Prasad Bisesa adopted those regional development plans and agreed to work with them. And those plans were supposed to be updated, because you'll appreciate that was in 2010, more than a decade ago. And those plans are supposed to be updated. And of course, it must tie into the national plan. So whether it is a manifesto that becomes government policy or a policy that is initiated while you are in government, any government who is serious about local development must include principles in their government's development that would latch on to local development. So do you want to provide jobs in these areas? How can that as a national objective tie in? How can we use the natural resources of Cedrus to create jobs? How can we have along the East-West corridor manufacturing and so on? What do we want to manufacture at a national level? So, for instance, if we are looking at having, I would just want to choose an area that is not typically associated with local government. So let me choose health, right? If we want to improve the public health system in Trinidad and Tobago, we need more nurses, we need more doctors, you need more what you call allied health professions.
Services.
So you have the Nursing Academy in El Dorado, which has nursing and allied health, so other professions within the public health system, to provide more nurses to the hospitals. But can we manufacture things like masks and gloves and other things that we could use in the hospitals? We can do that. And if you have zones where you can do that, let's say along the East-West corridor, you can have nurses being properly educated to have a better service in the hospitals. You can have people being employed in the manufacturing industry to make those things in the hospitals that we usually import. If we look at Sandy Grande and we look at fishing and agriculture, how do we at a national level boost agriculture in a way that the people in the region of Sandy Grande can benefit and can access their crops, access their lands, have markets? So at the national level, while at the local level we'll talk about the farmers, do we get manufacturing involved to process foods so that you will not have wastage and spoilage and tons of stuff thrown away? You can manufacture by canning and so on, and exporting, or by selling it on the shelves in local supermarkets. So how do we get agriculture and local government tying in?
You're talking about a more integrated approach to local government with other sectors so that the communities benefit and develop. I want to switch gears a bit. This is a very interesting local government election for Trinidad and Tobago. I think it's one that's seen a lot of heightened interest I have never seen so many smaller parties vying for districts. The UNC has changed, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, strategy a bit. Whereas in the past, the UNC has gone it alone at the local government level. In this election, the UNC has teamed up with the NTA in particular districts. And also, the Jack Warner factor has been brought back into the fray. From your perspective, two-part question. One, given the political leaders' musings years ago indicating 8 o'clock is fine, musings about Jack Warner should clear his name and then come back to the fold. What has changed to reverse that? And part two is because of Jack Warner's polarizing effect sometimes, I'm using that word generously, has Jack Warner's addition to the campaign helped or hurt the campaign in your opinion? So the first part question is how does the party reconcile?
I am on the East-West corridor.
And then come back. I
am on the East-West corridor, and I can tell you people have positively received the news that Jack Warner is working with the UNC. A lot of people remember the performance of government ministers who served under the UNC, and it has become part of their reputation, but it really has to do with the leadership of Kamla Persad-Bissessar in her government. Jack Warner, at the time of his separation from the UNC, said a lot of things that were hurtful to the UNC. And he also indicated publicly that he regrets making those statements, regrets making those accusations and allegations. And this is water more than flour now, where we are seeing the country go down a spiral and we have to recover from it. We have to pull ourselves from it. So he, as an individual, has given his commitment to work with the UNC and to work in general in the public domain to ensure that we have a return to safety and security, a return to delivery of services and so on under a UNC government. So
isn't that just double speak for the opportunism of politics? That you're trying to
well, I'm giving you what I get as the feedback from people on the East-West corridor where I have campaigned and where my constituency is. And
my question from the UNC perspective, the leader has said, Mr. Warner, you have issues to answer. Clear your name and then come back. What has changed?
How many years have passed since that, Paul? I mean, how many years have passed?
The statement was clear your name and then come back. Has he cleared his name?
The question is, because if we have issues with legal issues and charges and so on, those things should proceed as a matter of course. Those things should not be subject to political negotiation. Though if you are in government, you should not persecute Jack Warner or any individual if they oppose your government. You should not drop the charges or drop your hand if they are in support of your government. So the bigger picture really is for the government and the institutions of justice to answer whether, if there is an issue to be pursued against Mr. Warner or any person, has that issue been pursued? And have you delayed pursuing that issue because Mr. Warner was speaking in your political interest at the time? Or and do you intend to now resume prosecution against him because he is now on the UNC campaign?
But the government doesn't prosecute. That's a function of the judiciary ultimately in terms of that case working its way through.
Yes, and of course things like extradition and so on require the minister's input.
Yeah, but ultimately the judiciary is the one.
But the thing is, we have seen numerous instances where cases against, the Malcolm Jones is a classic, cases against political friends of the UNC, political friends of the government, the PNM, have been dropped. And you see instances where political opponents of the PNM have been targeted. So I'm saying that if there's an issue against any individual, whether it's Jack Warner or who, it should be treated fairly, whether that person is a political opponent of the government or a friend of the UNC, a friend of the PNM. It should not be different rules for different people. It should be same strokes for every person. Yeah.
Well, I agree with that.
Can you share with me some calls? Because we have people lining up to ask you questions.
Yes, sure.
I know you have to leave at 8 o'clock, and we really appreciate your time this morning. So,
our phone lines are open. Steve this morning.
Yeah.
Right here,
I
right
wanted
here.
to bring up the issue of, because you while we're waiting for calls to come in, you brought up the issue of financing of local government and that being an issue coming out from the national government. Of course, part of the reform package and connected to the reform package is the issue of property taxes for each area, which under the reform would actually be allocated, at least residential taxes.
Collected by and allocated to the particular body.
Yeah. What's the UNC's position on that? Because I know they have been anti-property tax at points. What's your position on that? Is there a position?
Yeah, no, the thing is, I don't feel that now is the time for property tax. But I also question the government's intention. They have indicated that residential taxes will go to the regional corporation and commercial and industrial taxes will go to central government. In many areas, you have industrial estates. So let's take Couva Regional Corporation. You have industrial estates there. The taxes from that area will not benefit the regional corporation. What you will also have, because in different corporation, you have a difference in density, the number of people who live within that region. You also have a difference in terms of the value of homes. So let's take Sandy Grande region. Sandy Grande has been determined by the CSO as one of the areas with the lowest income per capita. So they are the poorest region. People there are the poorest in the country per capita. The value of the house, many people there live in shacks. The value of the property tax from residential will be significantly lower than areas like Diego Martin region or even Tunapuna Piako, where you have high concentrations of residential property. It means that regional corporations will have a huge difference in how much they get. Now, you also will recognize that those with the lowest property values and those with the lowest income from residential taxes may also have the greater need to develop their region because of the state it is in. Think of the road to go to Matlot. Think of the communities where you have agricultural access roads failing, bridges falling down, and so on. So let us compare that to areas where you have higher value properties, and they may just want the park benches repainted. You know, they may have less in terms of requirements for development, less costs, and so on. So you must have a system that is fair to support development of all regions based on their need. As a chairman of Tunapuna Corporation, the commercial hubs are concerned to regional corporation. We had something called the Clean Cura project, which was an ongoing project to ensure that you had garbage collection every day and in some cases twice a day. You had maintenance of the roadway and so on from a public health perspective, collecting garbage, the installation of bins and stuff. And even on special days such as Carnival and so on, the town centers need special care. In those areas, the commercial taxes do not go to the regional corporation to support increased maintenance, the costs associated with that. So do I get better service if I am within a region and because my property is commercial property, the money does not go to the regional corporation? It does not. So you must put a system that is fair. And my concern is that we are widening the gap as well when we decide for only residential to go. But then there must be a solution, and the government has to present that to us to say, what is the alternative to fix that fault, to fix that issue? And I've not heard from them. I'm willing to hear, I'm willing to listen. But I feel that now is not the time to bring in the property tax. We have to put things in place to improve the economy, improve the income per capita a bit first, to support small and medium micro businesses in particular, so that, because even a parlor will be presented as a commercial property, you see. So even in areas outside of the commercial centers, you will have people who will have to pay commercial tax. I'm also concerned about the issue of squatting, because squatter regularization is something that the UNC has always been in favor of. And in fact, the Pandey government brought the Squatter Regularization Act, and Kamala Prasad-Bissasa's administration updated that act. We don't see squatter regularization happening now. We don't see
I think we have a call, don't we, Steve?
Yeah,
we do.
I just wanted to finish the point. And the thing is, squatters will still have to pay property tax, and that does not give them a right to the property that they are paying taxes for. So that is a serious concern as well. Yeah.
All right. Good morning, caller. Thanks for holding.
Yes. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning to the MP, Ms. Ameen.
Good morning.
I'll try to be as concise as possible. I have 2 questions.
Well, yeah, because we have 3 minutes and she has to leave at 8 o'clock.
All right. I will try to be as short as possible. Well, the first question deals with your stand your ground policy. Now, knowing very well that needs approval within Parliament and most likely a special majority, would you agree with me or differ from my inference that is just spurring fears of the population when you know very well that is not something quite feasible at this point and has no relations to local government? And the second question I would like to ask you is why it is that, if it is that you are speaking about local government reform, why it is that the policy was taken by your party not to have consultation instruction for no one to participate if it is in better interest of the population? Right? Thank you.
All right. Well, first of all, that last statement there, that is incorrect. The caller may have been misinformed. The UNC participated in the consultations. The consultations were very limited. I personally attended 10 out of the 14 consultations throughout the country. I went to different parts of the country and listened to what people said during their consultations. Frankly, Khan was the minister at the time. In Parliament, during the Joint Select Committee, I sat on the Joint Select Committee as a member of the Senate. It was saved, and then I continued when I became a member of Parliament. We had other members of the opposition who participated fully in those consultations in the Joint Select Committee. There were things that we objected to strongly. We provided a minority report, and that was also laid in Parliament. So we did participate, and we continue to participate and represent citizens. That is how we participate. But we also attended all the consultations. All of our councillors, or UNC councillors, facilitated and participated and gave their views. They brought people to have their say. They advertised it, So that is one I want to put on the record, that UNC participated. The local government reform became law. But the fact is, we have had the government do absolutely nothing in terms of making it a reality. So you have law, it was passed in Parliament. Since it was passed, the only portion of local government reform that was the Local Government Act that was proclaimed is the part to make for the term of councillors from 3 years to 4 years. And the objective was not to improve local government, but to postpone the election. There has been no other section of the Local Government Reform Act that has been proclaimed to bring meaningful improvement to the regional corporations, and that is an indictment on the government. So when they go on a platform and talk about reform, nothing prevents the government right now from doing reform, because it has been passed in Parliament and it is law, and it is for them to decide to put a schedule in place for proclamation, for them to put things in place administratively in the regional corporation to support the new measures, and they have not done that.
Kadijah, thank you for being with us this morning. We appreciate your time, as usual.
Yes.
I really appreciate being with you guys. I want to wish you all the best. We will be on the road every day for the next week. I think the UNC will surprise people in some of the regions.
Quickly, what do you think of the battleground areas? I know Sandy Grande is said to be one. What are the other ones you think?
Sandy Grande is considered marginal, but I firmly believe Sandy Grande will come home for the UNC. San Fernando is considered a battleground now, because there are at least 3 very marginal seats in San Fernando City that could change hands. One, the PNM won by 30 votes, another one they won by 80-something votes, and that could very well change hands. In Tunapuna region, interestingly, we have several seats there that are very close now. So even Tunapuna, that is considered a fortress of the PNM, they are losing ground. And we have seen that. I have personally seen that, because I've been in that area working with people campaigning over several several elections. So look out for surprises in Sandy Grande, as I don't expect there to be any surprise. I expect it will come home for the UNC again. We had that corporation move from being PNM for us winning 4 and 4 each, and then moving to where the UNC won 5, and the PNM had 3. So we may win more seats in Sandy Grande region.
Well, by this time next week, we will all know.
Yes. So I really look forward to the results, having been there on the ground with our candidates. We have fantastic candidates. Some of them are general election material. Some of them are really good, but they are very community-oriented and people-oriented. And I think people have seen the level of the quality of their potential representatives, and they have responded well. They're also fed up with the PNM, So I want to thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to share with you this morning.
Thank you a lot, Kadijah. Have a good day.
Thank you, Kadijah.
You all have a great day. Tomorrow, when we will have a minister come in as our guest, 7 at 10, right here on Power Digital. Have a great day. You should tune in. Give him a call. Have a great day.
Right. Have a fantastic day, people, whatever you do. And of course, reminding you, theater is on in San Fernando this weekend. What you're looking at Misso 4 is on at Sapa for one night only on Sunday at 6:30 p.m. at Sapa. Of course, tickets available at K Squared Fashion C3 and at Gulf City, Friends of Marabella by the Roundabout, and Creme Fresh at Brentwood Mall in Chaguanas. And of course, the box office at Sapa opens tomorrow from 12 noon to 6 p.m. Look